Well, hi there, folks. How's it going? Welcome to 30 Days to Amaze. Day number 3. You've already made it to day number 3, so you're almost 10% done of this whole 30-day challenge. I just want to start off by saying I love this group already so much so far. It's so much fun for me to, first of all, just talk health.
Well, hi there.
Oh, there's some
Folks.
feedback. Um, it's so much fun for me just to sit around and talk about these health concepts, but with an audience that seems eager to learn and engage. And there's just like nothing more higher vibe for me in my own life than that. So I just want to thank you guys for participating so far and keep it up. Again, point system. Every comment gets you 2 points for a maximum of 4 points a day. Every post, independent of that, will get you 5 points. So Michael took advantage of that yesterday. And so yeah, post away with your stuff, man, and let us know how you're doing on this journey of health, what you're learning, questions you have, and just you'll be a resource to other people and just an encouragement. And we'll just see how this community grows and shapes all of us in this month-long reset. So I'm happy to have you guys here. Got some important stuff to talk about, and I'm really excited about it today. I'm probably going to say that every day. Is that okay to say I'm excited every single day about the day's topics? But yeah, I was certainly triggered today, and it was brought on by 2 things. One, it was that post that Michael posted. If you haven't had a chance, read through that. It's lengthy, but it's got some really, really good stuff in there. And then on my morning walk today, I was listening to a podcast with the guest. This guy name is J.P. Sears. If you're not familiar with him, you've probably seen him before. He's come to prominence more so in the last 11 months or so. He's a long, red-haired guy who does these really amazing videos that are sarcastic but filled with truth. Speaking of truth, that's kind of what I wanted to vamp on a little bit here before I get to the day's email. So this is a quote from, don't turn it off, don't turn this live off, okay? This is a quote from the Bible, okay? Now, before you turn it off, I want to say this is not religious, and this isn't a religious group, and this actually has nothing to do with religion per se, but you might have heard this before, and this is where this comes from. Jesus said, "You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So maybe you heard that before, like in a movie, like I think it was in Liar Liar. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Well, that's from the words of Jesus recorded in the Gospels. And I just want to talk about that for a second. So whether you're religious or not, I think you will understand that truth produces freedom in your life. Okay, so if you're holding and beholden to things that are true, you are going to experience the emotion and the state of mind of freedom. They go hand in hand. Truth produces freedom. Now, the opposite of that is true as well, is that the opposite of truth, which is error, I had to enunciate that, error, but error, E-R-R-O-R, error, errors and lies, the opposite of truth, will produce what the opposite of freedom is. So errors produce bondage. They produce non-peace, if that's a word. It produces insecurity, anxiety, stress. And so that is kind of a good indication. And by the way, this isn't like not using any sort of scientific data because, I know that my heart isn't always 100% altruistic and it always guides me 100% the right way. But if I'm following my heart, if I'm following the vibes of what I know to be true because I feel things that are high vibrational, if I feel the emotion of peace, if I feel and experience freedom in my life, that's probably a good indication that I've got truth working for me, that I'm listening to truth, that I'm pounding truth in my head. And consequently, if I'm ever in bondage, whether that's physical bondage or mental bondage or spiritual bondage, I'm like, hey, there is some error somewhere that I have to expose. There's some lies somewhere that I have to get rid of for me to experience and live out freedom, which is the result of truth. So is that kind of making sense? Truth freedom, error, bondage. Those things go hand in hand with each other. And I think about the opposite of peace, and a lot of what is in the mainstream media, and let's just call it the mainstream narrative, is the opposite of peace. When you turn on the news, and I don't care if it's whatever news that you like that kind of aligns with your particular political agendas, whether that's CNN or Fox News or CNBC or whatever it might be, is like those news sources are, for the most part, giving you the opposite of peace. It might not necessarily be true information. And that's not to like put our head in the sand and just like to, by the way, I think turning off the news is actually a really good strategy for your mental health. But aside from that, it's not to say, hey, I don't want to listen to anything that's in the news, but it's just really hard to know whether you're being told lies, and which results in anxiety and stress and non-peace, or whether you're being told the truth, which results in freedom and that kind of feeling. And again, it's really hard to know, right? If you just Google a question, for instance, and I don't care what it is, you're going to get millions and millions of different kinds of answers, especially as it relates to health, which I'll circle back around. Just taking a long time to get there for a second. But, there's that's a red flag, is that if you are constantly being bombarded with your news cycle. By the way, how much news do you need? Turn on the news for about 10 seconds or 10 minutes at the most. 10 seconds actually would be better. But turn on the news for about 10 minutes, get what you need to get out of it, and turn it off. Okay, if you just need to be informed. Because if you realize, hey, if I've been watching news for the last 3 hours, it's pretty much the same stuff over and over. It's just being reinforced and reinforced, and it can have a huge deterring effect on your mental and probably physical and spiritual well-being. And so I say turn off the mainstream media and turn off the mainstream narrative. Now, if you think about error and what causes that, it could be because one of two things. One is that someone is telling you lies and they know that they're lying. Okay, so they're a con artist. Or it could be that they're delusional. So if you think about a cult leader, for instance, they're either lying to you because they're a con artist, or they just don't know any different. They think that they're the Messiah and they're delusional. But the end result is the same. Whatever they're being told in your particular cult is a lie, and it's error, and it's keeping you in bondage. Hopefully you're not a part of a cult, but we're all prone to that. We're all prone to narratives. And I can't remember who said this, but whoever controls the narrative controls the people. So I think it's really important that we figure out the narrative of our lives. Again, I'm going to circle back to diet in a minute here, because this applies. But if you think about it sort of like meta in a larger scale, whatever narrative you're listening to, or whatever narrative is being going through the populace, that will control all of us. And just as an example, and I'm not going to name any names, and you might have a difference of opinion on this, and this is why I'm not going to name any names, because I don't want to trigger anyone with this, because this isn't the forum for it. But there's like one person who has been placed at a very high position in our culture who is writing the narrative. I would say controlling the narrative, but I don't think this person is controlling the narrative. But they're writing a narrative. They're saying a story, and most of our culture is buying into it. And I'm not here to say whether this person is saying things that I agree with or disagree with. That's another topic for another time, kind of thing. But when I listen to this person and the advice this person gives, I know how I feel. I feel low vibrational. I'm like, there's something, even if I can't argue with this person, because this person's a lot more learned than me and could argue me under the table when it comes to the concepts that this person is such an expert on. But when this person spouts off what to do about certain things, I think you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't agree with it, and even if I can't intellectually, put my head around it, and then again, I've got science that would refute what this person's saying, and this person has science which would refute what I'm saying. So we could argue back and forth and arm wrestle about whose science is the better science. But having said that, there's something just in me, deep within me, like, you know what? That's not true. And I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I'm like, hey, there's something that's not producing freedom in my life. That's producing some kind of ugh in my life. And consequently, when I listen to someone else who is a well-known scientist and researcher, and I find this person argument, if you want to call it that, a lot more compelling. There's the opposite reaction. I listen to this person, I'm like, whew, that makes a lot of sense. And boy, that produces freedom in my life. And boy, I'm not scared anymore. And that's producing a life of freedom. So I think you see where I'm kind of getting at with that. So again, if you are ever experiencing bondage in your life, know that it's because there's error there. And it's your job to expose the error, to find out what is true. And I think that you will be a lot happier. You'll definitely be a lot freer and a lot more peaceful. So circling back, that was kind of a long way to get to what I wanted to talk about was, before I get to the email, that article that Michael posted. And I thought it very captivating because it was all about the word plant-based, or the phrase plant-based, and why that's kind of a trendy thing right now. So a couple things I want to say about that is that, plant-based, as like what the article said, it doesn't necessarily mean healthy. I used to think that. It's like, well, yeah, the most nutrient dense, the most healthy stuff in the world is plants, and I probably should stay away from that bacon, because even though it tastes really awesome, I probably should not have it a lot, because that's kind of unhealthy. It's probably full of cholesterol and saturated fat and all that kind of stuff. And so I had this, I probably should be eating a lot more salads. I should be eating a lot more greeneries and fruits and vegetables and things like that. And while that might be a good strategy for some, it's deficient in this area is that plants are overrated. And by the way, I'm not trying to be like, gospel truth person about what diet is correct. And that's another thing I want to say about this is that, people ask me all the time, hey, Chris, is what you teach, is that keto? They say it like that too. Is it keto? Or do you have a paleo approach? Or are you vegetarian? Or are you vegan? Or are you pescatarian? Or I do Weight Watchers, or I do Optavia, or whatever it is. Why do we always have to put a label on food? Like, food has become kind of in the same realm as politics and religion. It's just kind of such a taboo subject to talk about at family dinners. And it's definitely something, man, I've stopped arguing with people on the internet. I didn't do that very much, but people have their dogma about what diet is the best diet, and every other diet is wrong. And I never want to be that way with food, because for instance, there's no label. The things that we've been learning about these first 2 days, there's no label for human food. Maybe there is. I can't think of what it is to just eat nutrient dense food. I have no label for just things that fuel the human body. So whatever that is, if you come up with a great label and you want to kind of brand it, but you know what? I want to stay away from those labels, because that kind of just puts you in a box. It's like, it kind of gives you like parameters to say, hey, this is what I am. But we're not that. We're not what we eat. Our identity is not wrapped up in our diet. And so that's why I don't label anything what we do. I don't call it keto, although there might be elements of that, and we'll talk about keto and what that means and how that could be a good strategy for you potentially. Hey, dude, are you carnivore? Well, I eat like a lot of meat, but does that make me carnivore? I don't know. I don't think so. I never want to label myself, I am carnivore. That has nothing to do with the kind of person that I am. Although that I might prescribe to a certain way of eating because it makes me feel awesome. I don't want to ever like label that and put me in some kind of like tribe or club. So hopefully that makes sense. But going back to the plant-based, it's very trendy right now. And a lot of it is for good reason. A lot of it is because there are people that love animals, and they see what's happening to, is it CAFO? I can't remember what that stands for, but CAFO for short. But it's pretty much the majority of the meat raised in this country is in pretty deplorable conditions. Maybe you've seen the chicken trucks going down the highway, just stacked upon stacked in these like little cages. And that's not a humane way to raise chickens, and it's definitely not nutritious for you to be consuming a lot of chickens that are raised in tiny little cages and produce eggs in tiny little cages and then are raised with antibiotics. So it's a really good idea to figure out where our meat's coming from. That's why it's a really good idea and a good strategy to eat nothing but grass-fed or pasture-raised animals as much as possible. On the spectrum of things, that's like one of the highest ends of the spectrum is to eat just sustainably raised, humanely raised, grass-fed kind of meats, for instance. But so back to the plant-based folk or the vegan folk, it's kind of trendy right now, but it's like I think it's coming from a place of love. It's like, they're animal lovers and they don't want to see these baby cows killed. The only thing I would say about that, and that might be a true statement, is that don't think that your plant-based diet is a bloodless diet, because you might have a hierarchy in your own mind about what life is more important than other life. If you think a cow is more important than a rabbit, but rabbits are killed in the monocropping soybean fields. The endless cornfields, plenty of ground nesting birds are killed and deforested, and plenty of mice and rodents and other little creatures that roam the plains before we go in there with our big tillers and big John Deere tractors and rape the land so we can have the cheapest grown corn, wheat, and soy. That's all subsidized by our government. Quick note, by the way, did you know our government came out and said that coconut oil causes heart disease and cancer? That was a couple years back. It's really interesting that coconut oil, have you seen coconut trees anywhere flying over the United States? Probably not, right? Our government doesn't subsidize coconut trees that are grown in more tropical regions, but they do subsidize corn, wheat, and soybeans in this country and make it super, super, super cheap to grow. Lots of it. But back to the vegan diet, it's not a bloodless diet. You are killing animals by the droves, just different kinds of animals. So that's the first thing I would say for people that are like all plant-based, to do it for the love of animals. The second thing is that it's going to be a diet that is depleted of vitamins, primarily B12. I find that an interesting one because B12 is not only, but it's primarily found in animal products. And so most hardcore vegans that I know of, they have to supplement with a synthetic B12 vitamin. And that should tell you something right there. If you have to technology your way to health with extra supplements and vitamins that you can't find in any kind of food in your diet sucks and your diet is lacking in something. So I think that's kind of another argument. And I'm not here to argue against veganism or anything like that, but I am trying to say it's like, it's not healthy. And the references in that article are really, there's a guy named Paul Saladino. He's kind of the carnivore guy. He's very, very cool and very, very smart. He's a good guy to listen to. And Diana Rogers, who came out with a book and a documentary, along with another one of my health heroes, a guy named Rob Wolf. And it's I haven't watched the documentary yet, but you can get it rental on Amazon right now. And I think Google Play or one of the other places. But if you just search Sacred Cow documentary or book, you can pick that up and read that and watch that. And it will just have a great, it'll change your perspective on how to save the planet, how to eat awesome, how to feel great, and a lot of what we're talking about in this 30 Days to Amaze. So one other thing I want to say about why we're doing what we're doing that relates to everything I've been saying up to this point is that one of the things that we're doing this month is that we're trying to get rid of toxins in our life. So we've talked already about the big three toxins in our food supply, right? The crappy oils that are produced in factories, the added sugar in our diets, and all the grains. And by the way, that article pointed out that those three things and the unholy trinity of foods are all plant-based. I know a lot of my vegan friends, they don't eat hamburgers. They eat a lot of Beyond Burgers and, imitation meats and things like that, but they're plant-based. But pretty much their plant-based is bowls of Cheerios and Special K and candy and cake. That's kind of most of the vegans that I know. They're plant-based, but they're eating a diet that's full of questionable, dodgy, inflammatory junk. So, but anyway, going back to toxics, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to eliminate all of the toxins in our life because we live in a very toxic world. By the way, Here's a little food for thought. Guess what place, what province in the world is the most toxic stew of toxicity? The place that has the most air pollution by far in the whole world. The place that has the most glyphosate in their soil, and the place that uses the most antibiotics in their pig farms and all of their other livestock. So just wonder what that would be. It's not anywhere in the United States, go figure. It's in a little province called Wuhan, China. And I find that very interesting. So when this coronavirus hit and came out of Wuhan, whether you think it came from a lab or not, there have been some reputable people that knew this was coming, that knew that a pandemic was coming by just, a couple of years ago, by looking at the air pollution populates in all of Asia and seeing where the worst pockets were. And Wuhan by far had the worst, had the most toxic glyphosate, which is called Roundup. Maybe you've heard of that as well. That weed killer that's killing all sorts of things, including us. And antibiotics in their swine. So you've got just a stew of toxicity, a little pocket right there in Wuhan, China, which I find very, very interesting. I'm not saying one caused the other, but I find it very enlightening that some people knew that this was going to happen years and years ago. But anyway, that's just an example of like, hey, how can we get rid of toxins in our food? We're going to talk about getting rid of toxins in our air and in our surroundings and all that kind of stuff. But really, this is like a month where we're trying to just detox. We're trying to like live a different way that's going to just slowly and effortlessly and in a way kind of mindlessly detox our lives. And hopefully at the end of these 30 days, you're going to feel and look maybe better than you ever have. And maybe that will help you have a life of sustained good habits with this stuff. Hey, Josh, you've seen the movie, huh? I'm excited to go see it myself. I want to get it for free. I don't want to rent it for $4.99. I'm such a cheap SOB. Cows are carbon sequestration machines. Yep, those cows are not... cow farts, I don't think, are killing the ozone. I've not seen a reputable argument that cows are destroying the ozone, so we need to eat less cows because their farts are just killing all of us, and we're going to burn to death because of them passing gas. All right, to the email. All right, rule number 1. I don't have many rules in the optimized life, but for the next 3 days, we're going to learn my only 3 rules. And if you apply rule number 1 and rule number 2 and rule number 3, you are going to have amazing results in your physical and mental and spiritual health. Okay, so rule number 1 is what we'll focus on today. Rule number 1 is to always answer the call of hunger with a meal. The key word in that sentence is meal. Okay, so not a snack, not a little bite of something. Okay, when you feel the call of hunger in your life, okay, old diet advice, and by the way, just before I got on this call, I was looking at Instagram and I noticed that someone I respect a lot and really like a lot was saying, hey, the reason you're not losing weight, if that's a goal for you, the reason you're not losing weight is not because of all these answers, it's just because you're probably eating too much. You're eating more than you probably should, so stop it. Stop eating so much. And how many of us have been told that forever? And I think that could be true, that we do eat a lot. But the problem is, as we talked about in subsequent days, is that when we eat standard American diet kinds of foods, they are so nutrient poor that you're just going to be tacking on calories. And so I want to come at it from a different angle, not to say, just stop eating so much, you fat slob. You can't control yourself. Just exercise some willpower. Stop eating so much. And what do? You just walk around hungry forever. So what if we could cure hunger signals, the way that hunger shows up? Well, the first thing we're going to do is apply rule number 1. Rule number 2 and 3 are going to help with that a lot too. We'll get to those tomorrow and the day after that. But for right now, rule number 1 is to always answer the call of hunger with a meal. So when you feel hunger happening, for us, it's that growly stomach. It might be a little bit of dip in energy until we get our metabolism straight. But once you feel that call of hunger, you're going to be like, I'm not going to put that call of hunger down. I'm not going to tell myself I'm a big fat slob and I'm just going to exercise willpower. I'm going to white knuckle it through a couple more hours. Like, no, you're just going to answer that call. You're going to be like, hello, I hear you, hunger. I'm here to answer the call. But you're going to answer the call of hunger with a substantial meal. Okay, so you're going to make yourself a meal. And if you remember from day one's email, we said that snacking is going to go away. It's going to go by the wayside. And this is the way that you attack that. Many of us are kind of chronic snackers, kind of eating all throughout the day. And maybe you've told yourself, yeah, I have the metabolism, not like a bear, but more like a bird. I just need to be eating all the time. Or maybe someone gave you diet advice once that says to really be healthy, you need to eat 6 meals a day. I've heard that one before. And the reasoning is you just got to keep the fire burning. You got to keep the engine stoked. That doesn't make sense to me. Talk about low vibe. I mean, if I had to eat 6 meals a day, how low vibe is that? I'm going to be constantly thinking about and preparing and eating and doing food. I mean, I don't want that to be so much a part of my life, right? I mean, food is a big part of my life, but man, I want it to be a smaller part of my life. I want to eat less meals. I want to eat more substantial meals and more of them and more satisfying meals so they will carry me on through longer periods of the day. So I'm going to waste less time thinking about meals and preparing meals and eating meals. Does that make sense? And so when you feel the call of hunger come on, I want you to answer that call with a meal. By the way, whatever diet or fitness coach has told you to eat when you get hungry, I want you to eat. And if you feel the urge to snack, okay, so it's 11 p.m. and you got another hour before you go to bed because you can't sleep because you don't go to bed early enough, but it's 11 o'clock, you're wide awake and you're turning on Netflix, you know what would be good with the Queen's Gambit right now? It's a big bowl of popcorn, So you feel like that, or some ice cream or something like that. By the way, do you ever have the 11 o'clock snack urges come on? You're like, I think I'm going to make a salad. I think I'm going to go for some chicken thighs in the fridge. Like, no, we always are looking for the quick hit and junk food kind of thing. It's just kind of the way like those snack cravings work. But if you feel the snack urge coming on, here's what I want you to do. I want you to say, you know what? If it was me, I would talk to myself. So I'm going to go third person here. Chris, your last meal sucked. Okay, so if you had dinner at 7 p.m. and now you're hungry at 11 p.m., you sucked at dinner. Your dinner was lame. You didn't have a good substantial dinner to carry you on through the rest of the evening until bedtime. So I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to make a mental note. And the next day, I'm going to have a more substantial meal. I'm going to have maybe more of that. Again, what coach is going to tell you to eat more? That might be a great strategy for you, is to have your meal times, you have more calories. Just know that it's going to sustain you for a longer amount of time. And by the way, for me, this is the best way to combat the 3 eating patterns that so many of us fall into: stress eating, boredom eating, and what's the other one? Stress eating, boredom, just emotional eating, Maybe bored and stress and emotional, there are some similarities of that. But for me, that's the best way to attack that. You're probably not eating because you're stressed out or you're bored or you are just, you've had an emotional day. It's probably because you're just hungry. I know that there might be some other little triggers, and we'll talk about those then. But for the most part, it's just kind of a baseline. You're hungry, man. It's like those Snickers commercials. You're not you when you're hungry, and you're not going to satisfy that hunger with a Snickers bar. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a substantial meal. You're going to answer the call of hunger. You're going to eat until you are satiated, so the feeling of hunger has subsided, and the hormones that cause hunger. By the way, it's mostly hormonal. Just to give you an illustration of this, I do some fasts every now and then. About once a month, I'll do like a 41-hour fast, and once a year, I'll do a 7-day fast. And it's always amazing to me when I do these fasts is that the first day is really, really hard. It's about 9 o'clock at night, right before bedtime, and my stomach is hurting, and I'm just like, I'm so hungry. And I go to bed, and I wake up 7 or 8 hours later, and guess what? I am not hungry. It's like, well, where did it go? I should wake up being 8 hours more ravaged, but it's not there. And that tells me that hunger is mostly hormonal. It's just hormones in our body. By the way, I'm going to get a little sciencey on you, but there's a hormone called ghrelin, and that's your hormone that makes you hungry. It cues the hunger signals up. And the way that you can remember the word ghrelin is it causes your stomach to growlin. Okay, so ghrelin causes your stomach to growlin. All right, so by the way, you don't have to memorize ghrelin. That's not important. But just know that when you're experiencing hunger, most of it's hormonal. Most of it's that thing in your brain called ghrelin that's being produced that's saying, "Hey, Chris, it's time to eat." And know that that's you need to satisfy that hunger with a substantial meal. So if you do this, and you do this with what we're going to talk about with rule number 2 and rule number 3 in the next 2 days, if you do that with a meal, that is going to help you from snacking. And guess what happens? You, by default, will eat less calories. You won't have to worry about eating less and willpower in it. You're not going to be eating less junk food. You're going to be eating probably more food, but that's more sustainable and more satisfying and more honoring to your body. And it's going to be calorically dense, but as a total, it's going to satisfy hunger for longer periods of time, and you're going to eat less calories. And if weight loss is a goal for you, now we're talking. For me, when I look back on it, it wasn't because I ate too much that made me 50 pounds overweight. You know what made me fat was hunger, hungriness. When I got hungry, I would eat a whole bag of chips or a whole ream of Oreo cookies or Chips Ahoy cookies. I could eat a whole freaking box of those things. And it's just like, man, it's like when you are eating these kinds of foods, you're eating tons and tons of calories, but your cells are remaining unfed. And so your brain is saying, just keep eating, Chris. I mean, you got to get more nutrients here, Chris. I don't know why I do this when I talk to myself. It's like a microphone. But hey, you got to eat more, Chris. And you just keep on going and going and going. And until you just have enough bulk in your stomach, I might have eaten 3,000 plus calories in a whole box of Chips Ahoy. And the only reason I'm stopping is because I just feel it in my stomach. I'm like, well, I guess that's a sensation of full. It's staved off hunger for a few minutes. And then sure enough, a couple hours later, I'm ready to eat something again. But for instance, let's just contrast that with something like a dinner of steak and broccoli. And you eat that, and now you have the sensation of fullness and satiety, and it's going to sustain you for the rest of the night. And guess what? 11 o'clock hits if I'm still up, which I'm not, because I go to bed at 9, because I'm a grandfather. But if I'm up late at night, the tendency for me to eat a bowl of popcorn or Ben and Jerry's or any kind of sweet and salty snack or something like that is totally, I wouldn't say it's totally blown out of the water, but it's going to be such a less of a temptation. It's kind of the old thing that my grandma used to tell me, right? It's like you never go to the grocery store hungry. There's a lot of wisdom in that, by the way. You never have to go to a grocery store. If you just had a big old honking meal of steak and broccoli, for instance, you're gonna go to the store and you're not gonna probably be so ravaged to grab all this crap. You're probably gonna grab stuff that you need and want, and you're gonna make better decisions. But the same goes for just eating snacks late at night. It's like that is probably gonna go away. Most of the emotional eating, most of the boredom eating, most of the I turned on Netflix and just kind of, there's something in my brain that says that I have to have a snack to go along with the TV watch. And most of that's going to go away if you are satiated and full and feeling good from your meal. So I hope that makes a lot of sense. So again, it's just a different kind of way of attacking the same thing. If weight loss is a goal for you, getting less calories burned than you take in is that's kind of what we're all after. Although we're not going to talk much about calories, and because we're going to come at it from a different angle. That's a topic for another time. I got a lot to say about calories and why counting calories is a terrible way to get at health. But topic for another day. I've rambled on long enough. So let me go through the rest of your comments. By the way, keep shooting me questions. I don't think I had any questions to answer in today's thing up ahead of time. But yeah, if you have any questions or concerns or obstacles, throw that in our little Facebook group. Put them in the comment section of each video that's live, or if you're watching on YouTube, throw that in the comment section, and I'll refer back to that later. So, Kevin Ruddle says, just say no to snacking. Correct. And it's not just like no, you're being a bad boy, Kevin, if you feel snacking. Just know that, hey, if you're hungry for a snack, just go, Kevin, you idiot, you just made a crappy breakfast, or you didn't have a good enough breakfast, or you skipped breakfast, or you had a lousy lunch or a lousy dinner. It's like, so I'm going to remember that next time. Maybe say no to snacking this day, and the next day say, you know what, I'm going to have more food the next day, more nutrient dense food, more sustaining food, more calorically dense food that's going to carry me on. So snacking will, I won't have to like say no, even though it'll just be easy to say no to snacking. So that kind of takes care of that willpower thing, right? Josh says it's always funny that I get hungry at specific times. Yeah, me too. You know, we're such creatures of habit. It's amazing that, you know, our hormones can learn, you know, when we get hungry. Just like my dog over here. Can you see my little poochie? That guy is so regimented. I kid you not. Like 7 p.m. every single night, he's like looking at me because I like have this little laser and we do some like laser exercises. So he chases around a laser and sprints, but like 7 on the nose every single night. He's like looking at me. Even when I forget, it's like 7 o'clock. It's time to do that. I only bring that up is like, hey, there's something inside this dog that has a clock. There's probably something in his hormones that knows it's time to sprint with Chris. And we're the same way. Who knows why we get hungry at certain times of the day? It's probably so much of a conditioning, not just that that we've conditioned response. Like there's some kind of emotional attachment to that. That's probably part of the puzzle, but I think so much of it is physiological. So much of our hormones are dictating how we're experiencing hunger and how we're satisfying hunger. And we are more chemicals than we probably realize and more than we think. We're just machines. And here's the good news too, is like you can reprogram that so easily. Maybe not easily, but very simply. And that's what this month is all about too. It's like you're gonna, without even knowing it, reprogram your metabolism. And it's kind of what I said a couple of days ago. It doesn't take long. We can abuse and neglect our bodies for decades, and our bodies are so resilient that they can really turn a corner and change within 21 to 30 days. You might not see the end result for a lot longer than that, but 21 days, 30 days, something in there, that's a great window to just start all sorts of new habits that can serve you and benefit you for the rest of your life. All right, so I think that is it for the Facebook comments. All's quiet on YouTube. So, all right, that's all I got to rail on today. So again, thank you for being on this little stream. I'm glad you guys are a part of this group. Continue to learn and grow and optimize your life, and let's keep getting after this thing. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you